Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Nina Williams in Depth. I'm a friendly tree and today we're going to talk about neutral and specifically using Nina in neutral. So this is a very tough one to talk about, and I think this video is going to be a lot more me talking and a lot less proper demonstrations, but I'll try and keep it entertaining, so I'll try and do things as we go. So what is neutral? Neutral is a fighting game term that we come across a lot, and it essentially it essentially talks about any situation in the game when both characters are in the same position, or neither character is at an advantage over the other character. This gets a little bit confusing because, of course, at different ranges and different positions, characters are stronger at doing different things. So, for example, Nina's often known at being stronger when she's up close. She's got a frame advantage, she's got a lot of short range tools that work very well. And anytime she does something like this, as you can see by the frame advantage, suddenly the situation changes, and that's getting out of neutral. So even if you're negative, that's still out of neutral, okay? But like I said, just because you're at frame advantage or frame disadvantage doesn't necessarily mean that's bad for your character. So different characters excel in different situations. And likewise with range. So while Nina's generally known at being strong at a close range, other characters are stronger at being at about a mid-range. And you can think of tools such as Jin's forward 4, for example, which is really strong in the mid-range. But even if someone's stronger than you, even though they do have what would be considered an advantage over the opponent in these situations, it is not getting you out of neutral. So this is where you hear people talk about things such as this character has very strong neutral, or their neutral game is weaker than that character. So you can still have advantages and disadvantages in a neutral situation. So it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing with Tekken is while Oki is prevalent all around the place, you got different scenarios that we've talked about before. Oki is prevalent all over the place. A lot of situations... Oh, we have counter hit on. A lot of situations force you back and put you back into neutral. So a lot of the Tekken game is based on neutral, and a lot of it is based on movement. So movement is a very important thing in Tekken because you're playing in neutral so often. And even when you're out of neutral, movement can be a strong tool as well. So regardless of which situation in neutral you're in, movement is your number one option. Okay, what else can we talk about in the general sense of neutral? A lot of the time, depending on your character, it's about trying to stay in these particular positions, such as maybe you may be strong at far range, maybe mid-range, maybe close range. And so a lot of the time your goal is to get there without losing any advantage, I guess, without being hit, or without getting into neutral, or getting out of neutral in a disadvantageous way. A lot of characters, their goal, of course, or many characters, their goal is to get out of neutral, but at advantage, and use these different tools, which can give them Oki, give them pressure, and allow them to continue to do stuff. So you could say, a lot of the time, what you're trying to do is get yourself out of neutral and staying in advantage. But that's not always the situation, of course. And sometimes it can be about resetting to neutral and then just trying to see what the opponent does and use your options to counter in a neutral state. And this is where things such as whiff punishing and just baiting moves in general. For example, if I can get in this position, we talked about Jin before in his forward 4. If I'm in the ideal position for Jin to do his move, forward 4, but I'm a backdash away from it whiffing, I can backdash and launch it. I can react to it whiffing and launch it. Because moves on whiff are very risky in Tekken. They're very risky in any fighting game, really. So you can use neutral to bait moves, to use things such as Whiff Punisher, or to use as even just an opportunity to get out of neutral by approaching. So with Nina, in her neutral at far and mid-range, this is where she becomes quite limited. And this is the case for a lot of characters, I have to admit. Like I elaborated on before, you can use your movement and you can try and bait a whiff from the opponent. You can also use things with quicker whiff recovery, so things like jabs, sidestep 1 backs, and even Evil Mist. You can use these to bait the opponent to try and do a move that might whiff that you can then punish, or get in and get out of neutral, or get into a more advantageous position for Nina. She does have a few different moves that she can use to get out of neutral from long range, such as her while running 1+2, her quarter circle forward 3, or even just things like run up, quarter circle forward 1, things like that. But at the end of the day, movement's the best answer. And if we set the AI to do a while running 1+2, you can see. Oh, I want a shot. Yeah, you can see how it's not the best way to approach all the time. Because if the opponent's using a keep away tool, such as a jab himself, this approach tool is useless. And likewise, it's steppable. So it's risky. Sometimes it's better not to try and approach just by using an attack. Sometimes it's okay, but you've got to choose your battles here. Another thing, of course, is her quarter circle forward 3. On counter hit, you get a juggle, which is nice, and the variable frames mean it can be, I think it can be up to +9. So you see the frame advantage changes because of the active frames. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's. Yeah. Anyway, you see the point that because it's got so many active frames, you can get different advantage. But even this can lose to highs if I can time it right, because it does not work against. Well, it does not go into a crouching state until much later. I think it's frame 17 or frame 18 of the move. And likewise, you can still always use mids. Okay, but that's other moves you can use things like down back 2 if you expect, such as, you know, you're trying to approach with a while running thing. You could use down back 2, or you could even use approach forward 3+4, which makes a forward 3 come out. But that's trying to get out of neutral. So what about if an opponent is attacking you? So while Nina's general game plan is to get close to the opponent, that's not always how you want to play. So sometimes at long range, you're better just to do these things to try and bait them, and you're better to wait for the opponent to come to you. Also, if you have the life lead, is there much point in you coming in? You might as well wait till they get to you, or use movement to make sure that you're not in a disadvantaged position with regards to walls and floor break or balcony breaks and things. So sometimes it's better just to keep your distance and try and bait for them to approach, opposed to always trying to dash in and get out of neutral with Nina. So at this, as well as doing things like the sidestep 1, the Evil Mist and jabs, you can also use keep away tools such as 4, or maybe even forward 2, because if you get that on a Twitch confirm, you can get a counter hit launch from it. And if you don't, if you just get it on hit, that's +8, and that's getting you out of neutral again. Magic 4 is a good tool to use here, and despite the range, down forward 2 as well. If someone's trying to approach you, hold on, then even at long range, down forward 2 can be good. And even as a float, you can still get a juggle in these sort of situations. Yeah. And of course Magic 4, it's the same deal, you can get a juggle still. Yeah. Or if you get the time right on what you're doing, you can get a oh, way too early, sorry. You can get a counter hit launch. Yeah. So that's what you can do at far range with Nina. I mean, there are a lot of other options too, but a lot of it's about just playing patient at range, trying to bait a whiff punish, or just try and get like something as a keep away, or trying to get in with one of her few options, which are risky, but can get her out of neutral. When I talked about the whiff punishes, I didn't actually specify which ones you had. So Nina has a few different options for whiff punishing. Obviously, if you're unsure on the option, you could just do something like a down 1-2, down for 1-2, or a back 2-2. But her main whiff punishes are really launches, of course. And she's got some pretty good whiff punishes, despite a few issues with the hitboxes. Things like back 1+4, 16 frame. It's risky if you get it wrong, but if they whiff a move, this is a nice fast whiff punisher you can use to launch them and get some pressure going. Next, you've got up forward 2-1. There's a little bit of a delay window, so it's hard, but you can confirm, especially confirming on a whiff when you're in that situation. And probably the best advantage of this is, even though it's a little bit slower, it's got really good range. It's really consistent. You're not going to have a second hit drop or anything. Very high damage. You've got so many different combo routes you can do from it. And if you do get it wrong, you're only neg 13. So it's a lot lower risk than like back 1+4. And then if you want more damage, you can do things like quarter circle back 4. It can also be useful with Nina's back sway. Like I said, baiting whiffs. Hayashida or backdash are two options you can do to bait the whiff as well. So from a back sway, your two best options are quarter circle back 4 or up forward 2-1. And this is only neg 15 and gives you high damage because you got lots of different combo routes you can do from here. Could have sworn that worked. Anyway, such as that. Yeah. And then probably the riskier ones, well, the riskiest one would be her Geyser Cannon, which has a few issues with its hitbox at the moment as well. But once again, you've got lots of combo routes and it's a little bit more damage. Well, I guess the two most damaging option, but at 19 frame it's slower and it's neg 17, so it's also riskier. But like I said, it's still good. It's still a good option. And I guess the final whiff punishes would be things like she's got up forward 1, but at 26 frame that's pretty slow. The advantage of this being it does low crush, so if you're a bit slow and they try and retaliate with a dick jab or a low or something, you still go over them and still get the launch. And then you've got things like her blonde bomb, which you can do from crouching easily. You can do from a back, well, if you do it right, you can do it from a back sway easily. And it's just got very long range. The risk here being it's negative 14, so a lot of characters can launch it. I suppose another whiff punisher you could use, forward 3, forward 2. Oh, that didn't combo. That didn't combo. Was it not reached? Oh, there we go. My bad. Or even things like a forward 3, or down forward 3, 4. Anyway, the idea here is you're trying to bait a whiff at this range if you're not trying to get in. And as I did say earlier, I think the key thing with Nina is you're trying to choose your opportunity. If you're not trying to bait a whiff to get in, if you're not going crazy with the attacks to try and get in, you're just trying to get to a certain range where you can run up and just do something to try and start pressure. And obviously something like this, you're running up to starting pressure, you can confirm if you continue or not. Okay, last but definitely not least is what kind of neutral pressure, what Nina can do in the neutral at close range. So this is clearly where Nina shines. This is where she can use her tools to get out of neutral easily and just play her game, I suppose. She's still got to be careful with certain characters, of course, and in some scenarios this is not where she wants to be, but this is where she's got the best tools. So I'm talking close to mid-range here. So you've got things like your down 2 pester low, which keeps you at a neutral frame advantage on normal hits, and you can't tell if you've got a counter hit or not easily. Oh, sorry. But gives you frame advantage on counter hit. But it allows you to continue a mind game because you recover crouching. And depending on what the opponent does, you can go through it, you can counter it, you can even do things like, if you expect them to press a button, launch them in different ways. So this is a situation where she can really control even if she's at neutral frames with the person, she's technically at an advantage. You've also got things like an amazing down forward 1, a short range but great homing move in down forward 1+2. You can see there, plus 20. Not a true plus 20 though, so they can block anything after it. But at plus 20, she's got very good mix-ups she can do there, so that's instantly getting out of neutral. And with the pushback on block, it's another situation where you can bait her with. Likewise with while standing 4, on block, you can get that range back and try and bait her with, but on hit, you're out of neutral. Once again, things like down forward 1, down forward 1, 2, really good for control. I mean, you can see the frame advantage isn't much, but you can use it to read what the opponent's doing, and once again, to get out of neutral. You pretty much want to be using faster moves. It's a general plan in most fighting games is when you're closer, you're using faster and more frame advantage moves, or moves that are lower risk. Like, you're not going to be standing here and just suddenly do a geyser cannon. You might, but it's often not going to work out well unless you've got them out of neutral first and into some kind of mind game, like there. But even then, you're better off doing something which is pretty much the same reward, lower risk. Okay. Sidestep 1 is really what shines in this situation for her. And things like while standing 1. So sidestep 1, once again, it gets them right out of neutral right away. But you got to be careful, because at this situation they're also going to be using fast moves themselves. So, for example, if I just do something like that, I can't just do a sidestep 1 outright, can I? It's too risky. Unless I use movement. You can see how I can use movement to get my opportunity by confirming for a whip. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're looking at faster moves here. So things like Magic 4 are still very strong with her. You could use things like Back 4. I'd be apprehensive about Forward 3, especially if you know the opponent can duck it. But if they can't duck it, it can be a nice tool to get out of neutral once again, get either a knockdown or frame advantage. Depending on what you're doing, down 2 is probably the better low to use here, despite the frame advantage down back 3, just because it can go under highs. And you've got that big mind game there where they might be willing to challenge because it's neutral, because it's 0. 1+4 is another very common move to use up close. And the reason for that is because of the bit of frame advantage there. It's safe on block. At -5, which gives you a good level to step. So you're getting out of neutral once again, but you're giving yourself opportunities. And while standing 1, it's kind of similar, but you can't quite step as well. Yeah, I guess that's the main stuff I wanted to talk about. Nina's neutral up close. You can still use whatever you want. Quarter circle forward 1's good, and I mean part of the sidestep 1 mind game. Sidestep 4 is still a good option. It's just the risk involved, but generally you want to be using slower, quicker moves here, and your goal is to get out of neutral, get a read based on what you're doing, to then be able to start your pressure. So sidestep 1, like I said before, it may seem like a great option, but it's not going to be good against everyone, because people who use a lot of quick counter hit moves, or just a lot of pressure in general, you're going to find the effort to set up a sidestep 1 isn't worth it compared to just doing something like a Magic 4 or a Back 4, or even just a down forward 2 or a while standing 2. You can just pester with jabs in general. You see they're +1. And another big thing about Nina's jabs, I mentioned down forward 1, 2 for confirming, but her jabs in general all have extensions, and you can do things like 1-2-1, which jails. unless you delay it. But if you delay it and they press a button, then yeah, it's a different story. Then you can confirm and get more hits and continue your pressure. That you can see like +4 at risk of doing that. So you can use mind games from that sort of situation. So it's quick moves you can use to get out of neutral when you're close. You can also use Hayashida or just a simple backsway as another option of whiffing, so to force them to whiff. So by doing this, once again, you can use it as an opportunity to whiff punish, just like you would in at far or mid range. Power Crush can be an okay tool to use, but once again, it's got risk. It's more against an opponent who's button happy, and you're anticipating they're pressing lots of buttons while they're at close range. And a lot of people are like that. You can think of a lot of situations where they're up close, they'll be doing things like this over and over. Heck, I'm one of those people a lot of the time. Anyway, so I guess the key message here is just with Nina, you're trying to get out of neutral, or you're trying to get a read on the opponent and whether or not you should be getting out of neutral, or you should just be using moves in a neutral situation and baiting whiffs or power crushing through what they do. You got different options. I think that's everything I want to talk about with close and medium close range with Nina. So like I said, talking about neutral is a pretty tough topic in this game because while characters have different advantages in different situations and it can be quite clear all the time where their intended range should be, movement is such a strong thing in this game, and the move pool of every character is so large and diverse that much of the time when it comes to playing neutral, you're not playing the character, you're playing your opponent. And so with everything I've suggested here, you're not going to be able to just go out and suddenly use Nina to an exceptional level and beat everybody, because what works against one person using a particular character won't work against another person using the same character, because it's all based on their playstyle and what they do. And what you need to do is you need to get a feel for their neutral. You need to get a feel for how they're moving, how they're approaching, when they're attacking, what type of moves they're using, and how you can use that to your advantage. Often whiff punishing, like I've said many times in this video, often whiff punishing is a very strong tool in neutral, but you're going to find a lot of strong opponents, they're not going to be whiffing that option often, are they? So that becomes a harder option. And instead you need to look at when they are attacking, how you can get in, if you need to get in, or what kind of game you can play to to give yourself the upper hand. It might just be a case of doing a couple of pokes and then keeping your distance. It might be a case of trying to frustrate the opponent to make some kind of high risk gamble. But at the end of the day, you can't tell without getting a good read on the opponent or knowing their playstyle. Sometimes it comes down to just making a hard read yourself, but that's just part of the game when you're playing in neutral and trying to get the upper hand on your opponent. Anyway, like I said, this has been mostly a talking video. I've tried to give a few demonstrations as we've gone. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you a little bit of insight on how to play Nina and how to approach the neutral game in Tekken. Please comment below what you find useful in neutral. What's helped open your eyes to neutral gameplay in Tekken 7 or other fighting games even. I'd love to hear it. I think it's an area that everybody struggles with and it can be a little bit confusing sometimes. Thank you everyone. Please like and subscribe and comment below. See you next time.
You win.
What's done is done.